All right, here's a quick video all about breaths on vocals. Main vocals are often quite compressed, and between each word that we want to hear, obviously the vocalist has to take a breath, otherwise they go blue in the face. So one of the problems with compression is that it's great for controlling the difference in levels of the words, the actual singing parts. But one of the problems is that because it's turning the loud bits down, the difference between the loud bits and the quiet bits is reduced. The dynamic range is reduced. And of course, that means the quiet bits are louder. And of course, on a vocal, the quietest bits are the breaths. So when you compress a vocal, you often get breaths that are much louder. And I find it quite off-putting. There's different approaches to this. Some people go through and chop them all out, which of course can eradicate the problem completely. And Logic has a function where you can use the strip silence, but I don't use that mainly because I find it sounds a bit unnatural. I still want to vote a breath in there because otherwise it sounds a bit strange. The vocalist sounds like they're just not breathing at all the way through it, and it sounds unnatural. It's actually quite subliminal, so having the breaths still there but a little bit quieter in the mix just gives you a much more natural sounding vocal. There's two approaches. First off, the quick method, you could use a gate. Here's a vocal, and if I play a little bit back.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. What appears invisible? Yeah, it appears.
So you can hear there's some there's some breaths in the vocal verse. If I solo it and play it back.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible to the naked eye.
So you can hear those breaths kind of are a bit loud, and they start to make me feel aware of my own breathing, and I start to kind of get out of breath just listening to it. It's a strange psychological thing. So I want them in, but I want them quieter. We could use a noise gate, so let's have a look. Now we're going to put the noise gate right at the beginning of our signal chain. Remember, in Logic it goes in at the top and out at the bottom, so this is the first plug-in, the one at the top that the audio goes through. So noise gate always usually goes first, and then EQ to sort out any of the tonal balance, and then you might start compressing and then perhaps adding effects on it. I'll talk more about a vocal chain later on in a different video. I think I'll just focus on the breaths today. So noise gate, it's in Logic's Dynamics noise gate. There it is. It's only a mono trap. So if we turn that on, now we know that there's a threshold. If I just look for that threshold point, anything that goes over the threshold will open the gate. Otherwise the gate remains closed, and it shows you that by this little light here. So if I have the gate set too high, let's do that first. The gate remains closed all the time. No good. So let's bring it down a bit and start back from there.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible.
That's not bad, but there was a couple of points there that it was kind of on the cusp, and it was starting to close. If I just set it a bit higher, and we can hear that where the gate starts to judder.
To the naked eye, it appears.
Often when you open up Logic's gate, the release time is actually quite short, and if I put that really short, you can hear it just chops it. So what we would want is a long release, so that the fade out is more gentle.
To the naked eye.
So you get a nice fade at the end. So a long release, but quite a short attack time. But if it's at 0, sometimes you get clicks. So I don't usually have it at 0, but 3 milliseconds is fine. This look ahead function is really useful, and what it does is it looks ahead in the audio and then opens the gate in preparation for the audio. So it means you don't lose any beginning bits with a slower attack. Okay, let's focus on this threshold. Now, kind of minus 30 or something was about right.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible to the naked eye.
So you can hear that's chopping it off, but we're losing all the breaths. So how could we have the breaths still in there, but quieter? Well, that's all down to this reduction. At the moment, it's set to minus 100 decibels, so it's pretty much gating it to silence. But we can have it gate down to just a little bit quieter, maybe a gain reduction of 10 dBs. Let's try that, and what we'll hear is we'll still hear the breaths in there, but they'll be quieter.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible.
So that's a bit better. We could leave it like that, but I'm a bit of a control freak and it still sounds a little bit gated to me. So the longer method, but the method that works better for me, is I don't use a gate and I actually automate it. If I turn on read automation here and open up automation by pressing A, you can see that I tend to go through the vocal and automate the volume, the main volume of the vocal all the way through. Why do I do that? Well, because the noise gate is coming before all the dynamics processing, they kind of start to work against each other. So although the gate is turning it down, the compressors are still turning it back up. If I put the noise gate at the end, so the gate isn't being compressed, then I'm going to have less dynamic range to play with. And it's going to be harder for the gate to actually work. So this is a personal thing that I do. I just automate the main volume, because the main volume, the fader, happens after all of these. And I find it gives you a much better, more controllable effect. Other methods people use, and I've seen this, they chop up the vocal into different parts, and then for each region they go into the region editor and they'll play with the individual gains. Particularly in Pro Tools, a lot of people do that because each region in Pro Tools has a little volume control. That works, but for me that is the same effect as the noise gate, because the clip, that's the volumes of the clips, and of course that is before it goes through the signal chain, which to my ears is a bit counterintuitive, because then all your signal chain is acting against this. So I tend to just automate the volume of the fader. If I play it back, we can see that.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible. To the naked eye, it appears invisible.
And of course then I've got absolute control over some bits. Maybe there's a shuffle or a footstep in the recording. I can bring it down much lower. Other bits that it's just a breath that's relatively clean, then it can just be like a 10 or 11 decibel drop. It's perhaps because I'm a control freak, but I find particularly for a main vocal, this way is the best way for me. It's a bit laborious, but once you're into it, it doesn't take that long, because if I just show you here, if I get rid of that one, I tend to zoom in. So click on the region, press zoom, and you can see, or press Z, sorry, for the zoom. And you can actually see the breaths and stuff, and you can see the words. I tend to just put a couple of points in, beginning and end, then just grab the middle bit, minus 10 or something, and then you can adjust the slope. Absolute control there. And then it takes 5 minutes to go through a main vocal track. Not too bad. As always, listen back and check your work.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. Yeah, it appears invisible.
Sounds good. Let's listen in context.
To the naked eye, it appears invisible. What appears invisible? The cut appears invisible.
Cool. So that was a little bit about getting rid of breaths on a main vocal. Different approaches, but that's the way I use, and I find that it gives you absolute control, purely just do a volume automation. I'll do another video which focuses on this channel strip, perhaps using this vocal, and think about all the processes that we're doing and why we might do that. All right, thanks.